We've all been told since the time we were tiny little children, take your vitamins, take your multivitamin, drink your milk, eat your fortified cereal. We all know inherently that vitamins and minerals are very important for optimal human function. But today we're going to dig down really deeply into a particular vitamin, which is actually not really a vitamin at all. It was named a vitamin before we really understood the full implication of what vitamin D does. I've got the great honor and privilege and pleasure of having Ivor Cummins, a good friend of mine from across the pond, who's been studying vitamin D and all the wonderful things it does for the human body for probably over a decade. I was doing some research on him today, and he's got YouTube videos about vitamin D from years ago. And so let me see. I think Ivor's with us. It's Ivor Cummins. You may have heard that name. He's a brilliant mind, and he can hold his liquor. I'll tell you that. So let's bring Ivor on and see if we can have him join. Ivor, are you there?
How you doing, man?
There you are. There you are. How's it going, brother?
Not too bad. Busy, 7 days a week. But yeah, that's just the way it is.
Same here. It's a pleasure to talk to you again. I haven't seen you since the worldwide isolation and cancellation of all the conferences, but it's a pleasure to talk to you again. And today, if we can, let's talk about vitamin D and really dig deeply down into that. I thought I'd been talking about vitamin D for a long time, but you, my friend, you've been talking about vitamin D for a few years now. So first of all, let's talk about before we get started, I want everybody to know a little bit about you, because there may be one or two people who follow me who don't know you. I doubt that, but maybe. So tell us who you are, what you do, and why we should care about what you think.
Yeah, well, Ken, I was a biochemical engineer originally in 1990 and degree. And I spent around 30 years since in complex problem solving in industrial high volume manufacturing, medical devices, electrofluidics. So either a manager or a team lead worldwide teams solving complex problems. So with the biochemical degree and all that experience in that sphere, it was easy for me in 2012 when I got some poor blood tests. I went to 3 doctors, not doctors like you, as it turns out. But 3 doctors, and one was a professor of medicine. And I challenged them all to explain, with my poor blood test results, they were standard enough, cholesterol and liver enzymes, stuff like that, to tell me what the high values, they were really high, meant, and secondary, to tell me how to fix these blood measures that were bad. And I got no answers. And I thought, how can they not understand standard blood tests enough to give me clear answers to both those questions? So I went and researched myself in 2012, and within a few weeks I realized what my problem was carbohydrate metabolism. I was eating a lot of healthy whole grain pasta, all that stuff, and I was eating vegetable oils because I thought they were heart healthy and all of that thing. So I fixed all that. In 9 weeks I lost 32 pounds, which I wasn't even trying to do. And all my blood markers got fantastic, and I learned all the metabolism of all of these things. And I went on then afterwards, I came across vitamin D because it's so involved in all these processes. And I just researched the hell out of that and gave lectures in 2014 that got fairly big on YouTube. So the ones you're thinking of, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a common kind of underlying thread for many of us in the keto, low carb, carnivore community, that we got metabolically sick ourselves, first of all. And we kind of just blindly trusted. I trusted my professors in medical school. I trusted everything I was taught. I never really questioned it, except to one thing we'll talk about here in a moment. I just kind of believed it. And so, you were much the same way until you got these irregular lab results, and you're like, wait a minute, how do I fix this? And I'm guessing the doctor said, well, Ivor, you don't fix it, we'll just manage it. And the engineer brain in your head said, if I had a structure or some chemical substance that was unstable or was damaged, I would fix it. And I think that's the common thread for all of us, is we fixed ourselves first and foremost, and now we've kind of made it our mission to help people fix themselves, and in many cases bypassing their doctor or the associations and organizations that are supposed to be in charge of optimal human health, we're kind of taking the lead away from them and saying, yeah, actually, everything they're saying is bunk. You really need to do this instead. So vitamin D, what is that? Why is it misnamed? What is it really?
Well, yeah, I mean, vitamin D is a pre-hormone, and vitamin D is used to make a lot of your hormones and cortisol and all these crucial things. And you can get it in a vitamin form, if you will, called D3. And you can get it through the sun, where cholesterol precursors in your skin are converted into this pre-hormone called 25-OHD. And the sun can do it for you in huge amounts. So just to give an example, 20 minutes in good sun in a bathing suit, you might get 20,000 IUs of vitamin D. Or you could take a supplement and maybe 4,000 or 5,000 per day in the winter when there isn't much sun. And you can eat D-rich foods like, fatty fish and egg yolks and various other foods as well can give it. But the important thing is, a few 100 million years ago, we came out of the oceans. And when we moved onto land, we couldn't access calcium very well for skeleton formation. In the ocean, the calcium was everywhere. And basically, vitamin D pathways were developed to bind calcium and enable bone formation. And it linked to the sun exposure. That's the link to the sun. So hundreds of millions of years ago, vitamin D was at the very earliest stage, part of our processes. And that's why it became so involved with so many other important things, including our immune system, because it evolved from the very early days with us and with the sun.
Yeah, and so a lot of people think that vitamin D is just a human vitamin or pro-hormone, but actually it's one of the most evolutionarily conserved molecules out there. Melatonin is one, vitamin D is one that goes all the way back to the invertebrates. I'm talking about before animals even had spines, they were developing the ability to use the sun to make vitamin D or to make vitamin D from some other way. It's integral to the life of definitely all vertebrates. There's no argument. Every animal with a spine that's ever been studied either makes vitamin D somehow from the sun, whether with their feathers, their fur, their skin, or they will have a vitamin D source in their diet that they get the vitamin D from. So this is not just a human thing. And anytime, Ivor knows this, you may not, anytime something is conserved through hundreds of millions of years of evolution, that means it's very important. And so that's one of many things. And then Ivor said another great thing, that just a little while in the sun, you can make 25,000 international units of vitamin D. And so if your doctor tells you, oh, you only need to take 400 or 800 units, but if you take that 5,000 units a day, like Dr. Berry recommends, you'll get toxic. Well, you can get that much vitamin D from 30 minutes in the sun at the right latitude. So obviously on its face, that's ignorant. So just one of many, many facts. So let's now talk about, what does vitamin D do, Ivor Cummins? And everybody watching this, if you have a friend or a neighbor who needs to know more about human nutrition and health, you're welcome to share this video, please. You can send an email, a WhatsApp, you can share it on Facebook, YouTube. We're live on Facebook and YouTube right now, but you can share it on any of your social media. You can even copy down the address and write it by hand and mail it in a letter if you're so inclined. What does vitamin D do, Ivor? What does it do? And I know we only have an hour, and you could talk about what vitamin D does for probably 18 hours because it does a lot of stuff.
Well, yeah, so vitamin D, the main thing people are aware of is bone formation and regulating those processes. So if you get our low vitamin D, like in the Industrial Revolution, you had kids in cities with smog and they weren't getting enough sun and good nutrition, and they got rickets, which is bow legs, very painful, destructive disease where your bones don't form, very tragic. Adults can get it too. But interestingly, because vitamin D is not being focused on now in the past 20 or 30 years, because it's not patented, no one cares. So we're seeing rickets popping up in the United Kingdom. We're seeing it pop up in America. Certainly dark-skinned people in Sweden and northern latitudes where the sun is not very strong for many months of the year, we're seeing rickets come up. So imagine that. our vitamin D status has fallen so low over the last decades that an industrial revolution kind of age disease is coming back. And that's how bad we are. So around 70% plus of Americans are below 30 nanograms per mil in their blood, which is way too low in my mind, and the Endocrine Society.
Yeah, I totally agree. I really would like for my patients to have a vitamin D 25 level from between 50 and 100. I feel like that's the sweet spot where you really start to decrease the risk of cancers, of MS, and a multitude of other chronic diseases.
Yeah, and I'd say there are different units, of course. So let's say 40 nanograms per mil is 100 nanomoles per liter. But I think America, it's mostly nanograms.
It is. Yeah.
So I'd say 40s is the target minimum, and by all means go higher. But the Maasai, black people, traditional in Africa, even though they have very dark skin and absorb vitamin D very, very poorly, because they're in a high UV or ultraviolet area, they're generally in the mid 40s or 50s, the men and women. And white people or Caucasians who get healthy sun when it's available end up in the 40s or 50s. But our modern population, of course, is down in the 20s. It's a disaster. And just to give an idea, people know it's important for bones. We mentioned rickets. So the authorities look at it and say, well, it's only when you're below around 12 that you get rickets. So 12 is what you need. And obviously that's insane. Right. You need to be in the 40s.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And so let's go ahead and dispel a myth right now, Ivor. And I know you've looked into this, and as have I. Is it dangerous to take too much vitamin D? In the States, most doctors will tell you if you're taking over 1,000 international units a day, that you are at risk for becoming vitamin D toxic. And they'll always say it just like that, vitamin D toxic, like it's toxic waste or something. And I've been prescribing vitamin D for 20 years now. And I have most of my people taking somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 international units of vitamin D3 daily, plus what they get in their diet, plus what they get from the sun. And in 20 years of testing, and you should test for a vitamin D 25 level, not what a lot of doctors mistakenly check for, which is a vitamin D 125. That's not the right test. That's the active form, but that's not the storage and transport form that you need to check for. And I maybe had 5 people in 20 years, Ivor, who had a vitamin D 25 level of above 100. And all I would have them do is decrease their dose by 20%. It would bring them back down to having a level of 70 or 80. Everybody was happy. Nobody was harmed. But go into a little more detail, because I know you know this backstory. There have been people who have taken ginormous doses of vitamin D and had no ill effects whatsoever. And I've actually never read a case report of a fatality or even a serious injury from taking too much vitamin D. Have you?
Yeah, I went through that at the time when I gave the lecture, the vitamin D debacle, I called it, back in 2014. And the science is there. So there's certainly no toxicity at 10,000 a day. And there's almost certainly no negative effect up to 30,000 a day. And after that, the data gets noisy and it's questionable. There was a guy or a few cases where they took hundreds of thousands a day and nothing happened because they got the wrong dosage. They were out by a factor of 100.
He had some fatigue and body aches and he had nausea. But as soon as he stopped taking, what was it, 300,000 units a day or something? It was something.
It was in hundreds of thousands. Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, and as soon as he stopped, all the symptoms went away. He had no ill effects. There was no toxicity. He was totally fine again. He was just taking too much vitamin D I think he did it for a few months. And they happened to discover it. No long-term injury whatsoever from that. And there's never been a documented case of an injury or a death from taking too much vitamin D that I've ever found in the medical literature. So, don't worry if your doctor says, 5,000, 10,000, that's too much, you'll get toxic. That's bunkum. They don't know what they're talking about. They have not looked at the research lately. I had a question come in, Ivor. What's the difference between vitamin D2 and vitamin D3? Is there a preference? Which one should I take?
Right. Well, D2 can be converted. It's the plant form, if you will, of vitamin D. And we can convert it. And I'm sure there were times in evolution where we maybe needed to. But the reality is the vitamin D3 for the same micro units given, its half-life or the length of time it stays in the blood and how it builds in the blood is much greater. So I think the fact that D3 is animal world, it's the better one for that reason. And the fact it translates into better blood persistence in a human and various other reasons. There's no reason to take D2. You can get D2, for instance, from mushrooms that have been in the sun. And if you can't get anything else, what the hell?
Yeah.
But no, D3 is so readily available now.
And so, yes, I totally agree, Ivor. And so for everybody listening, if your doctor, because there is an FDA-approved form of vitamin D in the U.S., Ivor, it's vitamin D2, and it's usually given in 50,000 units. And the doctor will typically give that to you once a week or once a month. And so it's this mega dose of vitamin D2, not D3. And that's the only FDA-approved way to give vitamin D. And so that's what most doctors do because they think the FDA is omniscient, and infallible. And so that's what they give. And I can't tell you of the hundreds of patients who would come to me and I would just tell them to throw the D2 in the garbage and take 5,000 to 10,000 units of vitamin D3 once a day because that's much more ancestrally appropriate. We got out in the sun every day. We ate vitamin D rich foods every day. I don't even think there's any research showing that you can even absorb much at all of the vitamin D2 megadose that you take once a week or once a month. It's just a foolish way to do it. But I think they had to do it that way in order to get a patent so that they could actually say it's FDA approved, right? But vitamin D3, there's never going to be an FDA approved patented medicine for that. You can't patent the sun, although you can vilify it. You can't patent it. And so there's no billions of dollars to be made here. So none of the big research institutions are interested in studying this really. And if they do study it, they'll put the patients on some paltry dose like 400 units a day. And then they'll run the study and say, oh, well, there's no observable effect from the vitamin D. Therefore, don't waste your money on a vitamin D supplement.
Yeah, and there's been a 30-year plus concerted kind of campaign against vitamin D, and it's very clear in the literature. They're using tiny doses. They see small effects. They dismiss them. And you can just see that the whole literature is biased towards just pushing it under the carpet. And I think a lot of drugs out there in the market act on various kind of vitamin D pathways, and it's known to be a competitive threat that if people all got sufficient or in vitamin D, they may have less need for these drugs that are semi-effective in many cases. So I think it's well known. In fact, just yesterday, someone sent me an article on this current viral issue we're seeing. A supplier of vitamin D had the audacity to say that vitamin D may help with robustness towards the viral issue or outcomes. And the FDA sent a cease and desist letter and threaten them. They have to take down the website. And now their website actually has a warning on it. When you go in, the antivirus says this may be unsafe. So I think there's a lot of pressure out there against any natural minerals, vitamins, and everything has to be the patented drugs. In many cases, they're not even as effective in getting sufficient in vitamins and minerals.
Oh,
and I think they know that.
Yeah, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it's very odd that the powers that be seem to be so against you getting a good supply of vitamin D, whether it's from the sun, which they vilify, or it's from a vitamin D3 supplement, which they either ignore or vilify, or if it's from vitamin D-rich foods, which are also, I think, without exception, high in saturated fat as well. So there again, those foods get vilified. I mean, if you wanted to make a compelling theory that they're trying to make us all vitamin D3 deficient, I don't know that I could really argue that strenuously.
Yeah, it's like I used to say to people, they can't get so many things so wrong by chance. It's like flicking a heads on a coin toss 7-8 times in a row. Almost every major thing in cholesterol, saturated fat, vitamin D, meat, healthy, animal foods, healthy, vegetable oils from factories, are they healthy? On every single question in nutrition, they perfectly got the wrong answer and hammered it from the stage for the last 30 years. It can't happen by chance. So the business is suited to push down anything that makes you healthier, and to exalt and make amazing sounding and exaggerate the stats on anything that's patented. And this is not a conspiracy. To be quite honest, I'm a corporate guy for 30 years. This is just business.
Yep.
We were involved in programs that were quite clearly not within the law technically, but we had to do them because the quarterly revenue and the quarterly profits is all that matters. Right. Nothing else matters. Absolutely nothing matters but that. So I know this.
Yeah, so many people, Ivor, don't understand the corporate structure. They think, well, no, Kellogg's is they love us. They're trying to take care of us. No, Kellogg's, the corporation has a mandate, and it's not make good products to make healthy humans. That's not the mandate. The mandate is to produce profits for the board of directors and the shareholders. That is 100% what they do. That's all they care about. And now if you do something too egregious and you get sued and run out of business, then obviously that would violate their mandate. So they're not going to do anything really stupid or really egregious. But if they can do something that's a little cheaper and it's not really healthy, but it's not terrible, nobody's going to die, they'll do that in a second if they can save 1 penny per box of fill in the blank, whatever processed food you're talking about. And people don't realize that that's how a corporation is structured. It's you have to make a profit for the board of directors and the shareholders, or you're actually breaking the law as an officer of the corporation. So a lot of people don't realize that. So you've touched a little bit on where we can get vitamin D. Is there anything else you want to say about that? Where can we get it? What's the number one source?
Okay, so I would ideally get the sun and ultraviolet, healthy ultraviolet light. Don't burn. My target is always, as you can see, it's only June in Ireland. Yep. Ireland is not a sunny country, but you can notice I've already developed a tan. Yeah, because I go out of my way to get that sun around midday. And I take a break from work.
Ivor, we both have been getting our sun. I'm more of a redneck than Ivor. Ivor, he's got a little Mediterranean blood in him somewhere back down the road. So he gets a little browner than me, but we've both been out in the sun because we both know the sun is healthy. It's good for human beings. We've been playing in the sun as hominids for 2.4 million years. The sun is good for you. It's not bad for you. I've got a chapter in my book about it. You talk about it in your videos. I agree with Ivor. Never get a sunburn. First and foremost, because it hurts. But secondly, getting a sunburn might increase your risk of skin cancer. But getting healthy sun every day and having the beautiful tan that Ivor's got or the redneck tan that I've got, it's healthy. It's good for you.
It's all good. And if you get your vitamin D through the sun, well, not only can you get huge amounts, like when I go out for an hour at midday in Ireland, even with pure blue sky, I'm getting 30,000 units. I think at some point the body then tails off and absorbs less because it's got plenty. But you get 20, 30,000 units in half an hour. But you also get nitric oxide generated in your skin for vascular health and anti-inflammatory properties. So the sun is giving you not just vitamin D3, the best stuff that your body makes, it's giving you nitric oxide. And as Professor Hollick, the discoverer of D, pointed out, there's several more photoproducts that your body actively makes when you're in the sun. And no one's even researched them because they don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
No money.
I'm working on a YouTube video right now about that, Ivor, all the benefits that we know of that we get from getting sun. But in that video, I say, I guarantee you there's other things that we get from the sun, but we don't know because can you imagine if you were a young researcher at Harvard and you went to your department chairman and you said, hey, I think that the sun does this, that, or the other. I want to get 100 people and I want to put them in the sun for 20 minutes at midday. That'd be the end of it right there because you'd be kicked out of the chairman's office and you would lose your funding and you would lose your position because everybody knows the sun's bad for you. So there's no telling what all the sun does for us that we don't have any idea because it's never been researched. I totally agree.
Yeah, and the effect on the immune system too. I mean, even God help us, the 1918 flu, they didn't even know about vitamin D or why, but they began to move hospital patients in Boston out into the sun, and they noticed a 40 or 50% improvement. And they just thought it was great, but they didn't know why. They thought it might be the fresh air, but it was the UV. And the other thing is the Jewish hospitals back in the era of TB, tuberculosis, they were up in the mountains 5,000 feet in Denver. And they used to set up all of their kind of solariums, sanitariums for people with TB, and they'd bring them up there, and they just knew it was better. But they thought maybe the mountain air. But what it really was when you go up to high altitude, you get much higher UV flux, right? When you get nearer to the atmosphere. And this has come up all over the world. And the patterns around the world of higher UV and where there's no cloud cover, you have lower multiple sclerosis, lower autoimmune, higher health. And it just goes on and on and on. But I can say one thing about vitamin D besides bones. It generally, you've got an innate immune system and you've got an adaptive. Now, with this current virus issue, you know, your adaptive is not working so well and your innate is sometimes overshooting. Well, vitamin D, when you're very sufficient, it keeps the innate down a little and it keeps the adaptive up. So vitamin D is a kind of a summer signal that is the reason we see that influenzas in the summer fade away. One of the big reasons is our immune system is tailored much better to deal with them. So that's why we always see in the Northern Hemisphere, the influenza season is in the winters. And then in Australia, they're 6 months offset because their summer is the opposite time of the year than ours. And they in their winter also see influenzas, big spikes. Hundreds of years, thousands of years, always the same, and always gone in the summer.
Absolutely. So, yeah. So the vital role that vitamin D plays in both the innate immune system and the secondary immune system is vital, absolutely vital. And I think that's the reason that you see the dips in both infection and cancer, because cancer is in part an immune modulated issue, right? That's why when you've got enough vitamin D, your risk for all those things doesn't go to zero, but it goes way down. And somebody just asked a very important question. D. Michelle said, does dark skin need more? And she said more vitamin D, but I think what they meant was, do dark skinned people need more sun in order to make the vitamin D, to convert cholesterol to vitamin D?
Hugely more. And it's not like 20 minutes for a Caucasian and 30 minutes for a black person. It's a factor of 10 maybe. Now you can look this up, and I think Professor Hollick has a D-Smart app, and you put in your skin color and everything, or maybe the phone reads it. Massive difference. So a Caucasian, as we evolved in Northern Europe and so on, we lost the skin pigment, which was there to protect us from equatorial powerful sun, and we lost it so we could get vitamin D easily in the weaker sun. But if you're a black person in America or Northern Europe, and that's where we saw rickets developing in black people in Sweden back in the 70s, it's a massive problem. You need to get way more. So if a Caucasian's going to get a nice amount in 10 minutes in a bathing suit, well, a black person might be talking an hour and a half in strong sun. So a huge difference.
Yeah, and so if you're going to live in modern society and have a job where you're indoors for at least 8 hours a day, if you're African American, it's not based on race. It's based on the darkness, the pigment of your skin, how much melanin you have in your skin. And so I can tell you from personal experience, Ivor, my patients in the clinic, the people with the lowest vitamin D level were always African American or Hispanic, and they had very, very dark skin pigmentation. And so it was very careful to always check a vitamin D in my African American patients, because I just knew it was going to be 5 or 7 or 10. And so I just posted a video on this YouTube channel about preterm birth, which in the United States, African Americans have the highest rate of preterm birth, and they also have the lowest vitamin D. And there's been multiple studies done on this. And it's a very, very high correlation. It doesn't show causation, but the correlation is so high, the relative risk is so high that it's almost certainly at least partly due to having a low vitamin D level. So any African American out there, if you don't have an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours to be in the sun, you need to take 5 or 10,000 units of vitamin D3 every day, and you need to get your doctor to check your vitamin D levels, because having a low vitamin D is a big, big medical deal.
It absolutely. And I can just quote some figures from a study I featured in 14, a study by the National Institutes of Health, and they looked at all the population in America, well, a sample, and different racial breakdown. And rough and tough, in the 80s, they found that around 50% of Caucasians were above 30, which is good. And in the 90s, around 12 years later, they went back and only 25% were above 30. So that's a disaster. It dropped in half. So now there's only a quarter of Caucasians that are above 30, like I said earlier, and it's worse now. But in the 80s, the black people, only 12% were above 30. And guess what they were in the 90s? 12% of them above 30 dropped down to 3% above 30.
Yeah.
So now you have 97% of black people are below 30. And their cousins, the Maasai, we have loads of data back in Africa, they're mid-40s.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shocking.
Yeah, and the higher your level is, up to and including 100, the healthier, in my opinion, you are.
Yeah.
Ultimate Coupon Lady says, I'm allergic to the sun. I itch all over after short exposure and get small itchy bumps. Can you tell me why this is? I'm fine if I wear sunscreen. I've got a theory. What's your theory, Ivor?
Yeah, well, there's corner cases of people who are very sensitive, and Irish people particularly. I would be concerned. I'm guessing your listeners are never eating seed oils or factory oils or vegetable oils. Yeah, so we do know now there's a huge problem if you're eating these omega-6 vegetable oil fats that are supposedly good for your heart.
Right.
They can become oxidized in your skin, in your cells, and really drive problems with the sun. And we hear, it's not proven in science, but anecdotally myself, many, many more people, hundreds, when they get rid of all vegetable oils and eat real saturated, real food fats, they find they can stay out in the sun maybe 3 times longer. I mean, or 4 times. 100%. So that's just one thing.
Story. You can tell I'm awfully red. I've got a lot of Scotch, a lot of Norwegian, a lot of German. And so 20 years ago, Ivor, I would be at the beach and I would have to tell my phone, wake me up in 10 minutes. I could go play with my kids in the water for 10 minutes and then I had to go to the umbrella. Or I would have a severe sunburn that ruined the entire vacation or holiday. I'm sorry. And also I would react and I would have this itchy, bumpy reaction to the sun. And I just thought that was my DNA, my genetics. That's just it. I'm screwed. I can never play in the sun. But since being a fatty meat carnivore for about 15 months now, I can stay in the sun 5 times longer now with no sunscreen, no shade, than I was ever able to back when I was a younger man. And Ultimate Coupon Lady, I think probably your problem is that you're eating too much soybean oil, canola oil, safflower, peanut, all of these vegetable seed oils, and they actually get incorporated into your cell membranes of your skin. And if your skin cells are made of inferior fatty acids, then your skin cells don't perform properly or optimally. And I've had a couple of experts in this field, and Ivor's right that there's no proven science because nobody will study this. They just want to tell you to slather on SPF 400 sunscreen. But it looks like it takes a few months. And just imagine how long your skin cells live before they die and they're replaced by a new skin cell. So probably 3 to 6 months of eating just animal fats, maybe some avocado, olive, and coconut oil, but none of the other vegetable oils. That rash should go away. It should stop doing that. And I've had a great many people reach out online and say, I used to be allergic to the sun, but since I'm carnivore or fatty meat, heavy keto, I can play in the sun all day and I don't have that reaction anymore.
Yeah, it's amazing. And the other key thing, of course, is it's not just to eliminate the bottles of oil or using the oil in the pan. Most ultra-processed foods, when you read the label, they've got vegetable oils and refined carbohydrates are the big ingredients. So you got to watch all the packet and processed foods as well if you want to eliminate vegetable oils. They're everywhere because they're so cheap. They are literally dirt cheap for the food manufacturers. Yep.
And I was watching one of your videos, Ivor, and you talked about this, and it brought back this memory. Back in 2001, I was an intern. I just graduated med school, and I was doing my first year of training as a resident physician. And interns do all the scut work. We're basically the janitors of the medical team. And so I was on my OB/GYN rotation delivering babies. And so we'd be on call all day for 24 hours delivering babies and doing C-sections. The next morning, we would round on all of our patients, And then the spontaneous vaginal delivery patients, we would discharge them later that day. And the intern had to write the discharge note and the discharge orders, which is scut, just it's slavery, drudgery. And so the chief resident was walking out the door, and he turned around and he said, "Oh, Berry, don't forget to prescribe vitamin D drops for all the exclusively breastfed infants." And I'd never heard this before. And I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, there's no vitamin D in human breast milk. If you don't do that, they'll get rickets." And that's the first time in my medical training where my spidey sense went, "What the hell? Did you not hear what you just said? So you're telling me humans don't make vitamin D in their breast milk? Vitamin D is mandatory for bone development and thousands of other things, and we're not extinct as a species. So how is that even possible?" But I'd been up for 36 hours. I was very tired, so I didn't argue. And I also looked over, and my attending physician, who's kind of the queen mother of the medical team with his long flowing white coat, he was nodding, "Yes, that's right." And I was like, okay, well, that makes no sense at all. So years later, I looked into it. And as you know, Ivor, but many people may not know, many doctors don't know this. If you give a pregnant woman 6,400 international units of vitamin D3 a day, she will make all the vitamin D in her breast milk that her baby needs effortlessly. It just happens. But if she's deficient in vitamin D, then she don't have it to put into her breast milk. And this study was actually done by a doctor in the Carolinas. And it was a very elegant study that just blew that away. So any doctor out there, if you're still prescribing vitamin D drops for exclusively breastfed infants, you need to get your head out of your butt and do some reading, get up to speed, and realize you just got to give the pregnant mom 6,400 units a day, and you don't have to waste a copay on the vitamin D drops.
That's exactly it. That was a beautiful study. I think it was Professor Hollis did that one. A very passionate man. He gets visibly emotional, shaking with anger when he explains these things. But of course, the medical system doesn't care because there's no money in it, blah, blah, blah. But I think also when they had the control group of mothers who were not getting the 6,400, they, of course, had insufficient breast milk and they had to give the baby the drops. But even late in the study around May, when the mothers who weren't getting the 6,400, they suspected they got a little bit of sun because suddenly their breast milk began to go up. So, you know, if you get the sun all summer and you supplement in winter, you give your baby the best chance in life. It's a shame people don't know it.
Absolutely. I totally agree. So let's talk about now, Ivor, how do we go about checking our vitamin D? There's actually a few subtle symptoms of vitamin D deficiency. And I've got a video on my YouTube channel about the symptoms of low vitamin D, but they're not black and white symptoms. They're not obvious. They're very subtle. And so ideally, you need to go to your healthcare provider and get your bloods checked. And what tests do they need to check, Ivor, and which one is not worth its copay?
Right. So it's 25 bracket OH close bracket D, 25 OHD. And that is the one. Now, the other one you mentioned, 125 dihydroxy, that's a different. Now, sometimes a doctor will use it for special reasons, but forget about that. 25 OHD, and you want to be targeting, I agree with you, Ken, higher is great, but at least be targeting well above 30 and into the 40s, at least. That's the human evolutionary level. Go there. You want to go higher and jack yourself up? Absolutely, but get there.
Yeah, and many doctors who know just enough to know that vitamin D might be important, but they're by no means specialists. They're looking for a special thing. They'll check a vitamin D 1,25. And that does not give you any idea of your body stores of vitamin D. You need a vitamin D 25. That's the proper test to check. And until you've had that test checked, you have no real idea of what your vitamin D level is.
Yeah. And you know, the 25 is the storage, but it also, and people are not really aware, it's not the highly active, you know, targeted other one, the 125. But it is quite active in many ways. In fact, just to give one example, it's amazing. 25 OHD itself, when you get TB or an infection, it will go into all of your cells, or many of them, It will go in and into the nucleus of your cell where your DNA is. Every one of your cells has your full DNA, 37 trillion of them. Amazing. But vitamin D will go in and transcribe proteins like catalcidin, antibacterial agents. And vitamin D is used to transcribe and get those made and replicated to attack infections. So it's just one example where 25-OHD, it's not the majorly active one, it's more the storage, but it also partakes in many reactions that could be really important for you.
Absolutely, 100% agree. I've seen multiple times the question, people are being told out there that if you take vitamin D3 as a supplement, then you must also take vitamin K2. What say you about that? And then vitamin K2, you and I could spend a whole another hour talking about vitamin K2. Very important. But do you have to take vitamin K2 if you take a vitamin D3 supplement?
Yeah, there are interactions there, and having really high D, but not having adequate or high magnesium and K2 and some of the other fat soluble vitamins is not ideal. So I would say that, yeah, but particularly magnesium, but vitamin K2 you can get in supplement form or in hard cheeses or natto, the Japanese bean curd product. It's a bit gross. And also magnesium. So magnesium, a few 100 milligrams a day of magnesium citrate after a large meal, or magnesium-rich foods. Having high vitamin D and having low magnesium may actually be counteractive. So, I would agree, get your K2 up, get your magnesium up. They're independently important, and also an imbalance like with copper and zinc.
Lost Ivor for the moment. Hopefully he'll be back in a second. Somebody's asked several times if taking a vitamin D supplement might help with migraines. I have seen the combination of vitamin D3, 5,000 units a day, and then 400 to 800 milligrams a day of magnesium together as a daily thing make migraines get much less severe and occur much less frequently. So, yeah, I have seen that work. Let's see if we've got another question or two here while we're waiting for Ivor to come back. Hey, thanks for the super chat, Dennis. Man, you're the boss. Thank you for that. This is great. Who is just watching this just because they love Ivor's voice? I know that's why I had him on. I love his voice. No, honestly, Ivor Cummins is one of the leading thinkers in the fields of nutrition and medicine right now. Neither he nor I went to Harvard. That's not where we came from. We just think outside the box, and we think deeply, and we think broadly, and that helps us arrive at these things that we're talking about now. I've put all of Ivor's links down in the show notes below. He's got a great book he wrote with Dr. Jeffrey Gerber called Eat Rich, Live Long, which is a very, very good book in which he goes into the science of why you should eat a high-fat diet. He's got multiple videos on YouTube that you should check out. Oh, wait, I may have him back here now. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. Here he is. He had to take a break.
Apologies, there was no power in the laptop. It actually just died battery, no warning. Sorry.
Oh, that's great. Okay, let's see. We covered that. We're about 43 minutes in, Ivor. Anything else that we've left out that you feel like really needs to be covered?
Right. Well, there's so much, as you said, Ken, we could talk about, but I'll just mention the current issue we're having around the world, that which cannot be named.
Yes.
Well, interestingly, there are several human studies, and they're all saying the same thing, that your chances of having a severe outcome or death are around 10 times higher if you're below 20 nanogram in vitamin D, and 10 times lower if you're above 30. Now, it's associational studies, but some of them have been corrected for age and comorbidity and sex. So they've been corrected, and they're still in the order of smoking and lung cancer, where everyone accepts that correlation is so big, you can call it causation. Yep. And I just say on that, okay, there's around 5 reasons you'd be a low D person, okay? And you'd be the person with 10 times the risk. So one is if you're not eating healthy, nutrient-dense foods like meat and fish and eggs and all that, you'll tend to be a lower D person. And not just because you're not getting D, because you're less healthy, and D is a marker for poor health. So that's one thing. If you're insulin resistant, hyperinsulinemia, or high blood glucose, diabetic dysfunction, that will drive down D. My boss actually was healthy and he had a tan, and he had so much diabetic dysfunction, he registered nothing on the D test. So, you know, that's another one. And inflammatory conditions, chronic inflammatory conditions drive down your D. They put you in the bad D status. And then there's lack of sun. And then there's maybe supplements. So there's a whole range of reasons you'll be the below 20 person. And all of them are contributing to poor immune function and giving you 10 times the risk. So can you imagine we got everyone fix those 5 things and we got everyone naturally up to be higher than 30 people? We'd have around 10 times less impact from this problem.
Yes.
In other words, we'd hardly see it.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Now, I hear this myth a lot. And the doctors in Australia are convinced that the ozone layer is completely gone over Australia. Okay. And so they keep telling their patients there that there's a hole in the ozone over Australia. And I actually talk about this in my book on the chapter about the sun. If you move from, say you're in Scandinavia, far north latitude, and you get on your bicycle and you start pedaling towards the equator, by the time you get to the equator, you're receiving thousands of times more UV radiation than you were receiving up in the very northernmost latitudes. Thousands of times, not a 5 or 10% more, but thousands of times more. If there is a thinning of the ozone layer, the studies I've seen, and you may correct me, Ivor, is somewhere between a 5 and a 20% decrease in the protection that the ozone layer offers us. So saying that there's a hole in the ozone over Australia and that they need to all hide from the sun, it's just lunacy. Do you have anything, any thoughts on that?
I'd agree, Ken. I mean, it's just absurd. And remember, the ozone layer was the big scary thing around 30 years ago, or when I was a kid. And then they stopped talking about it because I think they realized themselves what you just said. It's only a percentage difference, and it's tiny compared to the differences in ultraviolet between equator and even 10 degrees north. It's just irrelevant. And anyway, if you're in a high UV area, which is not suitable for your skin, like a Scandinavian in Australia, it's very simple. Just get less sun and make sure you don't burn. So it's the same rule if you're in Northern Europe or you're in Australia. Get enough sun to at most pink slightly and don't burn. And that's your measure. You don't need to worry about how much UV there is.
Yep.
You know, your skin will tell you and you'll get to know it quickly.
Yeah,
it's so simple.
In this blonde, we actually talked about how much exposure you need earlier. So just go back and watch this from the beginning and you'll get your answer. Thanks so much for that super chat, man. You rock. Let's see if I've got any. Keep going, Ivor. I'm going to be looking for a question. Oh, I know you.
Yeah, well, no. The only other topic I think we talked a few weeks ago, we'd catch up. And the only other one is the heart disease and the calcium scan.
Yes.
So I won't go through it all again. I have lots of videos and you can link one of them maybe later. People want to look it up. But really simply and short, there's a 5-minute CT scan. It's around $100. And in 5 minutes, you find out how much calcium is built up in your heart's arteries. And that's a sign that you have inflammatory vascular disease. So it's nothing to do with a calcium blood test or calcium supplement. Your body brings in calcium to strengthen arteries that are prone to bursting because of atherosclerosis. So this scan tells you immediately your real risk. Forget about cholesterol, forget about the blood tests. This thing blows them away. Yeah. And we made a new movie. It's at extratimemovie.com, extratimemovie.com, all one word. And it's $4. Yeah. And we actually get Irish sporting heroes, 45 of them from 1991, huge heroes in Irish football. And we scan them all in their 50s. And we find a whole lot of guys who are meant to be healthy and they had massive disease. And 3 of them had to get bypasses. And one of them actually had a heart attack before he got his bypass. So we went in there with 45 guys and found 8 or 9 massive risk people. But those guys were all said by their doctors to be fine. So the calcium scan. And we also follow a guy, one of our heroes had a score of 1200, which is huge. And he was fit and slim looking. And we followed him for a year, told him what to do, vitamin K2, vitamin D, fish oils. He got a blood glucose meter, stopped eating bread, stopped eating banana cake. And at the end of the year, we rescanned him and we got a great result. We did what medical science says you can't really do.
Absolutely. Great movie. I watched it. You guys will love the movie because every guy in the movie has an accent similar to Ivor, and most of them are almost as pretty as he is. So you'll love that movie. And I've got a link down in the show notes to that movie and to all of Ivor's social media and to his book, Eat Rich, Live Long, which he wrote with Dr. Jeffrey Gerber, another good friend of mine. And so check all that stuff out. Ivor, thank you very, very much. I know it's late there. You're losing your beauty sleep, staying up chatting with me, and I really appreciate you doing that. And you guys check out Ivor. He's got multiple videos on YouTube. Just search his name in YouTube, and you'll find them all. They're all worth your time to watch. Thanks, Ivor. Any parting words?
No, Ken, this is great. Always love to chat, and let's just keep fighting the battle for improving population health, because the medical industry and the pharmaceutical industry and the food industry certainly aren't going to help anyone, like we said. So we got to keep at it.
Oh, don't worry. I'll never stop. No matter what burns down, I'll be here with you, Ivor. All right, brother. Thanks a lot. I'll see you next time. See you guys.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.